We are back for another episode of Behind the Lyrics. This is actually episode 4, if you guys can believe it. But instead of moving on to chapter 4, we are going to jump ahead. Because today it's appropriate. We're going to jump ahead to chapter 11 that is titled Christmas Eve. And the song that we are going to go behind the lyrics is called Silent Night, Broken Heart. One of the reasons that I wanted to cover this chapter tonight, well, one of the other reasons, is because, guys, it is Christmas time. But it doesn't mean that everyone is always holly jolly, merry and bright, and life is perfect and all is well in love and relationships, and everyone is hop, skipping and jumping and twinkling to the lights, right? So, I go deep. I go deep into the stuff that is just that sometimes people don't want to go. And, it's okay for it to be Christmas time and it to just not feel like Christmas time. That's okay. And this time of year for me, this is year 7 that on Christmas Eve, I took on the title of widow. And no, I don't attach myself to labels, but I'm sorry, guys, that's kind of one you don't really ever get away from. When you've become a widow, you've become a widow. And even though life moves on, today I'm remarried, I'm happy, things are good today, but nothing can take that experience away. Nothing is going to remove it. Nothing is going to change how it felt. Nothing is going to change the memories that it carries, like nothing. And chances are you've gone through something, maybe not the same experience, but you've gone through something difficult. And it's okay to say Christmas time is hard. So tonight we are going to cover the chapter Christmas Eve and the song Silent Night, Broken Heart. Now, if these are all my notes in here. If you have not gotten your book, okay, yes, I am plugging my book. Order the book. It's not a book that is like, hey, listen to me, listen to my story. This is all about me, me, me. This is about my experiences that God said, look at these experiences through the lens of his love. This is all about looking at your experiences. I actually tell you how to look at your experiences, how to step into your crowned truth, how to step into showing your crown, wearing it proudly. And chances are your experiences, they've hurt. They've sucked. They've stopped you in your tracks. They've dropped you to your knees. Chances are, yes, we've all been there. So this book is actually using my stories and my memories and my experiences as the example, but to help you step into looking at it through the lens of God's love for yourself. And when you do that, you will change your life forward. Those experiences, no matter how far back they go, no matter how young you were when you had them, chances are they're still there. And until you begin to look at them differently, will you be able to use them differently and move forward? So if you haven't gotten this, I'm just going to say go to crownedbyfaithcollective.com. Okay, crownedbyfaithcollective.com. And everything's there. As we get started with chapter 11 titled Christmas Eve, I want to be sure that you all know that if you have questions at any time, maybe you read it, maybe you wondered something, or maybe I'm going to say something that's going to trigger a question. Maybe there's something that I'm going to touch base on that you wish you knew a little bit more. Ask me. Okay, ask me. I will share it with you. Okay, it's my experience and it's here to help. So I don't have anything to hide. I don't have anything to be ashamed of, and nothing hurts me so badly today that I can't talk about it. So I would rather you ask questions and let's dive into it. Okay. But what I am going to do, if you've not ever tuned into one of these types of shows on my episodes, I break down like a couple sentences out of the song, and then we go back and we read a bit of the paragraph, and I kind of just fill you in on what was really behind those words. Some are just two sentences, some are like the full chorus. Like, we'll just go through it. Okay. You know, I really debated. Do I dive into such a deep and heavy chapter on the night before, the eve before Christmas Eve? And the reality is yes, because here's something that I'm going to share with you that didn't quite like make it in the book. It's not really like a thing, but this was the day. This day was the day that I made the decision to turn the machines off. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced something like that, but I didn't know what to expect. The doctors had kind of told me like you might hear some noises, or you might, hear this. And so I was expecting like the moment that they shut things off and they pull that tube out and like, all of that happened. I was expecting like some big commotion, and I was ready for the tear waterfall and the breakdown and the lot. Like, I was ready for it, and I remember standing in that room, closing my eyes while they were getting ready to do all of this, because I didn't actually want to see them take the tube out and all of that. But I was like, I was prepared. This was the day. This was the day in my heart, in my mind, that I had set. And it didn't happen. He hung on all day long. This, and I'm just going to give you the warning. I'm going to probably get emotional because it was trauma day. It was traumatic. But this was the day that I thought was going to be the day that he would pass. This was the day that I signed the papers to turn the machines off. This was the day that I called his family out of state and said, we can't keep this going on any longer. And I hoped that they made it in town in time, but I just had to do it. We were doing no good for him. So this is the day that is really heavy for me. This is the day that was one of the longest days of my life, as I stayed in that room and just listened to the faint and shallow breaths until Christmas Eve came around, and then God took him. So this is a really hard day for me. This is the day that is like really hard. Christmas Eve gets a little bit harder, but this is the day that was so solemn. It was so silent because he was still here. But I thought he was going to go like that. I didn't know what to expect. Feel free to share this out. Maybe someone who is missing someone. Maybe somebody lost someone dear. Maybe somebody is having a really hard time finding the smiles and the laughter and the joy and the jolly in the season. There's nothing wrong with that. What I'm going to do is start with our very first clip, and then we will come back to talk about the book.
It's Christmas Eve. The world is singing carols, but I'm just holding your hand, praying you'll breathe.
So the first lines say it all. It's Christmas Eve. The whole world is singing carols, and I'm just holding your hand, praying you'll breathe. Okay, so that was this day 7 years ago, and it was all day long. So we go into, the nurse slid a clipboard across the counter. The pen clicked softly against it, a small sound in the too quiet hall. I picked it up and my hand trembled. My name blurred as I tried to write it. How do you sign your name to goodbye? His body lay just across the hall in the bed where we'd fought for his life for 25 days. I stood at the counter, bent over the forms, my mom beside me. The hallway was hushed, the faint hum of nurses speaking softly, papers shifting, monitors somewhere in the distance. So it was early in the morning hours when he did finally take his last breath. And there's nothing more surreal than realizing that you'd almost been holding your breath for like 25 days. Because if you guys remember, back on November 30th is when I said was the day of his heart attack. So I want you guys to even just like think about that for a minute. Think about November 30th. Think about like shortly after Thanksgiving. And think of all those days, everything that you've done, all the places you've gone, all the, all the activities that you've had, like all of those days. And all I did was sit in the ICU until this moment. So it was exhausting. It was a relief. It was heartbreaking. It was so many complexity of emotions all in one that I remember having that panic moment after like it was all done and I signed these papers and they're talking about him getting picked up and funeral homes and this and that. And I just had to get out of there. I was like, I can't even be here any longer. So as hard as that is, and as much as this is my favorite time of year, I will never apologize for the fact that these are the memories that play in my mind year after year after year. They just do, and they always will. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm stuck. It doesn't mean I haven't, forgiven or moved on. And, when people say like, you just need to move on, it makes me crack up because it's like, how do you move on from something that completely changed your life? You don't. And every year it's going to pop up and it's going to replay. And that's okay. I accept that. I receive that. Here we go into a little part. To understand how I could still give thanks on Christmas Eve, I have to take you back to that November 30th of 2018. He came home from a hunting trip a day early, which was a miracle in itself because he never came home early. He stood in the doorway, tired but smiling, boots still muddy from the faint smell of woods clinging to him. I hurried over, wrapped my arms around him, excited and surprised. While he'd been gone, I put up the Christmas tree. He'd left the day after Thanksgiving, so he hadn't seen it yet. We made our way to the couch, and he pulled me close and held on a little longer when I tried to stand and start dinner. It looks beautiful, he said, his eyes fixed on the 7-foot tree glowing in the corner. Now, that's in there because it's so important to understand that those are things he never paid attention to. Like he never really did. When I think of how can I look at the blessings, knowing what was to come, I can look back and see how many blessings God was actually giving us on this very last night of being able to even talk, see each other. So we're going to go into clip number 2 here real quick.
Tree lights glowing, dinner on the stove. You walked in smiling, said the tree looked like home.
And so now you know what that meant when I saying the tree looked like home. It just was such a tender, soft moment. And when I say dinner on the stove, It's kind of wild that day I had planned on making a new recipe. And again, I didn't think he was going to be home. But my son loved Panda Express, the orange chicken from Panda Express. So I was like, I'm going to figure out how to make this. And so I actually was preparing, making a dinner. And surprisingly, all four of us were able to sit at the table and have dinner together, which that never happens. You got two teenage sons. He was always hunting. He was always gone. So that just was very rare. So that's why I'm saying, looking back, you can see the blessings and the gifts that God was giving. Now, I want to share this piece because many of you that have read the whole book or the whole story, just because it ended badly, just because I discovered another layer that broke my heart beyond his death, doesn't mean that these moments weren't what they are. In these moments, I didn't know any of that other stuff. And even if I had, it wouldn't have changed how I felt. So that's why this time of year is so complex. And if you don't know the rest of that story, it's in the book and we'll cover it later, but we're not going to talk about that part of it tonight. But that's why this is so complex for me, because you have anger and you have questions and so much pain and so much hurt, but yet pain from the loss and pain from losing someone you love. I mean, all of it just hurts. It all does. And that's okay, because I can see things through the lens of God's love now. And that's why I share things like this, because it is so complex and it is so difficult, and you still have things to process. So if you are going through something that maybe you wish you were moving along a little sooner, or maybe you wish it wasn't going to hurt the way that it does right now, or maybe you wish that, you could have, would have known this or would have known that, I'm here to tell you that it's happening in the way that God chooses. And someday, in some way, shape, or form, you will be able to look back. And if you look at it through God's eyes, through the lens of his love, you will see the gifts in it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt any less. Doesn't mean that it doesn't suck. But you will be able to see it differently. And it's through that new sight that your life is different forward. So if you're in it right now, just keep going. If you're feeling it right now, just keep feeling it. Someday, in God's time, it will all make sense. So here we go. I didn't know then that ordinary could be mercy. That God sometimes tucks his miracles inside the moments we almost overlook. After dinner, he lay back on the couch, one arm draped over his eyes. Like I can still see it, when you're like just laying like that. The other hanging off the side. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the tree lights. He didn't turn on the TV, which was odd because there was always noise going on. But he just laid there, staring at the glow, soaking it in. It's beautiful, he said again, almost to himself. He loved the lights, the calm, the feeling of home. Now here's where this is going to be like really crazy. But when he finally stood to walk into the kitchen, because the way that our house was, we had like 2 steps that you could step down into the living room, but we also had like a cutout above the sink. So from the kitchen, I could see through, so I could see him laying on the couch and staring at the tree, but I was in the kitchen. So when he finally stood up to walk into the kitchen and he's coming up the step, I gasped. The dust from cleaning his truck had settled over his zip-up hoodie just right, forming an image clear as day of the face of Jesus, kind of like the shroud, or like the shroud itself, right across his chest. Now I gasped. I was like, because that's all I saw. His sweatshirt was burgundy, it was dark, and yet there was this like dust form that all I saw was the face of Jesus. And I stopped in my tracks. I literally let out a because it kind of startled me. So the book says my gasp startled him. He was halfway up the step in the kitchen, one foot lifted, the other still on the floor, and he turned slightly, caught off guard. For a second, we just looked at each other. I said, "Let me take a picture." That's how clear I could see this. I said, "Let me take a picture." Any other time, he would have rolled his eyes, called me crazy, maybe told me no. But this time he didn't. He almost laughed, a soft, genuine sound, and something in his face changed. He saw my innocence, my wonder, and instead of brushing it off, he let me have the moment. He actually let me take a picture. And that is a blessing. That would have never happened before. And when I say my innocence and my wonder, it's because I truly was like, oh my gosh, like I see Jesus on your face. And I don't know what that would have sounded like to him. I don't know if that would have freaked him out or what, but it was the truth. And I literally took a picture. And the moment that I took the picture, I remember thinking like, you can't see it. Like it didn't look the same. And that's how I knew whatever God was allowing me to see, that was God letting me know he was there. That was God letting me know that he was near. But I didn't know it at the time. But God showed his face to me so clearly that I tried to capture it in a picture and it didn't show up. But I know to this day that God was letting me know he was there. So here's clip 3.
That night you reached across, hand resting on me, said I can't fall asleep unless you're touching me.
So here's what happened. I gotta wipe my eyeball so I can read. So when it says without him touching me, so that night we didn't just go to bed. We actually talked, like really talked. And I'm talking like, do you want to be buried or cremated? That might sound so crazy, but that is literally what we talked about that night. And I said, I want to be cremated. And he said, no, I want to be buried. I want to be buried whole. I don't want to donate no organs. Like he wanted to be whole. We had that conversation that night, very random. We also talked about knowing each other back in high school and me in my pom-pom uniform. And, you know, he was 5 years older than me back then. So, you know, we kind of always would look at each other here and there. But if I'm 16, he was 21. So, I mean, we just talked about all kinds of stuff that night. So that night we didn't go to bed. We talked, like really talked. My head rested on his chest and his hand tracing slow circles over my shoulder as we drifted through memories and what ifs. High school stories, the party on the hill, which the party on in the hills in the book, the long fight it took for us to end up together. We even talked about death, burial, or cremation. Who might outlive who? It sounds heavy, but it wasn't. It was honest, soft, human. And from there, I'm going to jump to another clip real quick, okay? Because we are going to go there. We are going to talk about some things, but I want to jump to another clip here, and it's kind of jumping ahead in the song too, just a little bit.
Your eyes once sparkled like the tree lights glow, green when you were happy, brown when shadows show. Our final night, they shimmered like they already knew, like your soul was quietly saying goodbye to.
I had to bring up the piece about his eyes because I always called them mood eyes. You guys remember those mood rings? You'd put a mood ring on and it would turn blue or purple or black, and then you'd have to read the card and it would tell you, like, you know, what energy was going on or what mood you were in, that it turned that color. Well, his eyes were like mood eyes. And when they were green, like really green, it was, you know, he was happy, he was calm, no stress, it was a good day. But if he was pissed off, or he was in his mood, or he was just being a jerk, or, you know, he was stressed out, they would get really dark brown. And it was the craziest thing. Many times I could just look at his eyes and just know, because, you know, many of you know, like, our relationship wasn't the best relationship. Very narcissistic, very toxic, very walking on eggshells, very up and down. So I would know a lot of times, just by trying to catch a glimpse of his eyes, what to prepare for, what the rest of my day was going to be like based on his eyes. It was the craziest thing. But that evening, you know, as we were laying there, it's almost like God gave us a gift. He gave us an opportunity to have that moment one last time together. And one of those things that you just never forget because it's imprinted in your mind. But that evening, when I say it's like his eyes already knew, they were like a clear gray. Like they just reminded me of like this gray clear. Like I can't even explain it, but I remember at that time being like drawn in by his eyes, like I could see through them, or I had just never seen them like that before. So when you think about all of these things, looking back, that's when it's just like, wow, you know, God does show us things. God does tell us things. But the way God works, we don't know these things ahead of time. And so when I talk about him laying things down gently, when there's so many different pieces unfolded, and I was able to look back, man, God was good. Man, God blessed me so much throughout all of those days, leading up to those days, directly after those days. Like God gave me a gift. And that's where sometimes the things that are difficult, and sometimes the things that hurt and that are hard, it's hard for us to understand, how can this be a gift? But God doesn't promise taking away the hard things. That's life. Life isn't fair or unfair. We put fairness or unfairness on it. Life is simply minute by minute, constant movement forward. And I think God does things that allows us to see, even though it's hard, he's still here. And he'll still do what he knows that we need, whether we know that we need it or not. But many times we cannot see it until we look back. So when I think of that evening, that very, very last night, not knowing that it was our last night, so beautiful, such a blessing. And I'm grateful to God. I'm thankful to God for that. And no matter the outcome, that was a true gift. So, so now we're going to jump into the next day. Okay. That next day, he's up, back at work. He owned his own business, was always up before I would wake up. And, I finally get up and I'm starting to decorate more Christmas stuff. I love Christmas stuff. So I was hanging ornaments, beautiful ornaments from our chandelier, and just, I had garland up the staircase. Like, it looked like Christmas threw up in our house, and I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And lights everywhere, greenery, ornaments, ribbon, Christmas treats, like you name it, all kind of stuff. And he had called that morning and said, hey, I'm going to come home around lunch. You want me to bring a breakfast sandwich? And I said, no, I'm good. I was good. I had my breakfast, drank some coffee. So, and some of this is in here. Okay. But he got home and said, I'm going to go take a nap. And like I said, that step that we have from the kitchen to the front room, he was up in the kitchen, I was down in the front room, but I remember reaching up and giving him a little kiss, and then he walked back to the bedroom to go take his nap. And within that split second, just God told me to go back there and give him another kiss, go back there and give him a hug, do something. And so I had been wiping some things down for the chandelier and stuff. So I put my towel down and I walked back to the bedroom, and he was already laying down, and I went to kiss his cheek, and he didn't say nothing to me. And I'm talking to him, trying to, push him, and he's not talking to me. And I remember telling him, like, dude, quit screwing around with me. Like, you just got back here. I know you're not sleeping. And then something just felt weird, but I still didn't see. I couldn't, I still was thinking he was just messing with me. So I tried to tickle him under his armpit, because I thought this will get him moving. Because then I was like, dude, if you don't quit screwing around with me, I'm going to call 911. I was like trying to tease him now. And he didn't move. And for the first time, that's when I actually realized he was laying face down in the pillow. But I didn't see it before, because I was kissing his cheek, or I just thought he was messing around. I thought he was screwing around with me and like pretending to just be face down. And so here in the book, it says, I pulled back and I pushed the pillow down, and I pulled it back and heard the strangest, most terrible sound, gasping that wasn't breathing. Panic surged. I dialed 911, my voice trembling, half begging, half commanding. My oldest son ran in. Following the dispatcher's instructions, we rolled him from the bed onto the floor. I threw open the French doors that led to our bedroom and waved toward the porch, trying to guide the ambulance in. Minutes blurred. The paramedics filled the room. Boots were thudding, bags unzipping, urgent voices layering one over another. And I stood in the corner, clapping like a coach, shouting, "Come on, baby, breathe. Come on, baby, breathe." And 7 shocks, nearly 50 minutes on our bedroom floor. He kept fighting harder than anyone expected. At one point, a paramedic stepped out to talk to me. His face said more than his words ever could. They called for a second ambulance, he explained, because they needed more of a certain medication. He'd already been given everything they had. He's still trying to breathe on his own, the paramedic said. Still trying to pull air from the bag. So the paramedics were shocked. They're like, he is still fighting to try to take a breath, and they weren't expecting him to make it. They were trying to kind of hold things off right there because they didn't think that he would have been able to make the transport by ambulance, but they didn't even think that he was going to make it. So that's like pretty crazy. And we're going to go into this little clip right here of how this kind of coincides with this part of the story.
Next morning you were quiet, face down in the bed, no breath on your lips, just the sound of dread. 50 long minutes, 7 shocks to your chest. I screamed and I prayed while they fought for your breath.
So you can see how those lyrics are direct. Like, this is my story. These are my words in these songs. And the whole part of, believe it or not, this song through Spotify and on YouTube is streamed a lot. And even though I'm very specific, 7 shocks to your chest, 50 minutes, you might not have to have those exact details in your life, but it's that fight. It's that push. It's that lingering. It's that heartache. It's that unknown. Those are the pieces that you can relate to. So when you hear this, mine is very specific because this is my story. These are my details. They did have to shock him 7 times. One of those times was even in the ambulance. They allowed me to ride up in the front because it turns out the paramedic, I knew him. We knew him from, back in the day. So he knew the both of us, all from high school time. So he let me sit next to him in the front seat, and I'm still in like shock, but in the back, they're still shocking his chest. They were still trying to get him to come back, only because he kept trying to gasp for air. That's why they kept fighting so hard. But we're talking, by now, over 50 minutes had gone by, and that's a long time. Like, that's a long time. Oh, and I will add, because it's in here. Somebody had asked before, his heart was actually in good shape except for that widowmaker. That, what they call that main artery, it was 99% blocked, but the rest of the heart was clear. So what ended up happening was that length of time, that over 50 minutes, it started affecting other things, other organs from the lack of oxygen for that amount of time. So for 25 days, I lived in the ICU. My world shrank to beeping monitors, dry erase boards with care team and goals, styrofoam cups of coffee, and the soft squeak of an IV pole wheel, when they have to wheel everything around. Our second wedding anniversary passed with him unconscious in that bed. Our first had been me recovering from neck surgery, so not much of our marriage ever got to be celebrated. Then the stroke hit. Massive. Final. Hope thinned to a thread, then to a decision that landed in my hands. We turned the machines off. He breathed on his own for a few hours. The steady rise and fall of his chest, the only sound in the room. So yes, 25 days. And then he had a massive stroke that showed up. And that's when we knew, like, okay, we're done here. There's nothing else that can happen. So We're going to move into one more clip here.
Now it's Christmas Eve and you're not coming home. Hospital halls replace mistletoe. 25 days of holding my breath till you slipped away. Christmas Eve.
So it's just after 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, and he took his last breath. Panic rose like a wave. At first, I was numb, then grateful to the nurses. Then suddenly, I didn't know whether to cry, laugh, or throw up. My chest caved and my throat closed in. The air in the room felt too thick to breathe. I couldn't stand to look at him laying there, still and silent. I had to get out. I stumbled into the hallway towards the nurse's station. The world around me muted and spinning. Then someone handed me the clipboard, papers, instructions. The nurse spoke gently about funeral home transport, about phone calls I'd be getting for arrangements and donor options, all about what would happen next. And it was all happening on Christmas Eve. Then, through the hum of voices and the scratch of pens, I heard it again, clear, familiar, his voice, those same words I once hated. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Now, I froze. It didn't make sense. He was gone, and yet I wasn't alone. Now, the reason this part is so important is because when I had to get out of there, when I felt like I was suffocating, when I'm like, I can't look at him anymore. Like, I can't be in here another second. I was like, somebody take me home, just get me out of here. But I still had to handle all the stuff. I still had to sign papers. They had to tell me things, and people had to come, and it was just chaotic. But my mom was standing out there with me, and everything was quiet. Everyone's whispering. Nurses, you got to keep in mind, they even have the lights dim, like it's 3 a.m. So that ICU, everyone's trying to be quiet and patient sleeping and everything's critical. And then all of a sudden, you hear these two nurses from like across the way. Their backs are towards us. They're not even like right there. So loud, super clear. Because all I was just wondering, like, I don't know if you've ever been around somebody when they've just passed away and you start wondering, like you start talking to them immediately. Like, are you still here? Can you see me? Like, what's happening? Like, but I had that, like, when I'm out there in that panic mode, knowing I can't be in that room one more minute, but knowing like I got to sign papers, or trying to tell me about all the things that are going to be happening next. And even though it was Christmas Eve, I would still be getting calls. And I remember thinking, like, are you here? Can you see this? Like, do you know that this is happening? Can you let me know that you're here? Like, all of these things are going through my head. And I'm standing with my mom and those two nurses right across the way. All I heard was, sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. Loud and clear. Now, I have to let you know, that was one of his favorite lines. I had never heard it till I met him. And then I started using it. because he used it. And he didn't like that very much, but that I knew. So I like pause and I look at my mom because she knew, because I would always say like, oh, I hate when he says that. But I looked at her and I'm like, did you hear that? And she's like, yeah. So, and that was it. Those nurses went back to whispering. You didn't hear a word that they said, but that one sentence was loud and clear. And that's when I knew, like, you're here, because I hated that. I hated that sentence. But we have that in the clip, but I tweaked the words just a little bit to make it a little bit more poetic to go with in the lyrics. So when you hear this now you'll understand what that line means, because it's actually supposed to be that sentence of sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. And you'll be able to notice why I tweaked it a little bit to kind of like blend in with the song. So that's what this means. Here we go.
At 3 a.m. I signed your name away, pen shaking in my hand as the night turned gray, and I heard your voice like a final reprieve. Sometimes it's better asked than to plead.
So that's what that means. Sometimes it's better to ask than to plead, is basically him asking, instead of asking for forgiveness. But that really happened, and that was like so freaky. And the thing is it wasn't just me that heard it. I remember looking at my mom like, did you hear that? And she's like, yeah. And that was the only thing that was like spoken out loud, clear as can be, that one phrase, that one sentence. And that's when I knew, as I was thinking in my head, like, gosh, are you here? Like, what are you experiencing right now? Like, you just passed over. Like, I mean, all these things were going through my head. And then to hear that loud and clear to me was that indication that he was there, and God allowed me to have that validation. And it was just crazy. Like, it was just crazy. So yes, this time of year, it's not sad. Okay. It's not sad for me anymore, but it's traumatic. Like, it's still, it triggers your memories. It affects your mood. It takes you back to places, and it doesn't mean that you have to stay there, but it's also not good to try to force it away, or try to ignore it, or try to deny it. And that's the whole point by me wanting to bring this up tonight on this Christmas Eve, because today's it's a weird day for me. It's a weird day. My whole family was there. It was a quiet day. It was an exhausting day, but it was also his final day. And coming home Christmas Eve morning, it was tough. Like, I felt like a bad mom. There was no more Christmas in sight. I hadn't seen my dogs in like 25 days. I mean, there was just so much that was just left undone. And now you're home, and it's supposed to be like, everybody, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. And it was like, it's not a Merry Christmas. And that's not to say, like, we all know the reason for the season and whatever your beliefs are and things like that, but it's okay. That's the whole point. That's the message. It's okay to not be holly jolly merry me and hopping skipping with my cocoa and my Christmas pajamas and blinking lights all over the place. Like, it's okay for your heart to hurt a little bit at this time, and it's okay to not want to be around people that sometimes people get uncomfortable around somebody that is feeling low and down, or even just wants to be quiet. That can make people uncomfortable. And chances are it's because they're avoiding something. They don't want to go there. They don't want to tap into an emotion that is in denial. So I'm just creating the space to say, hey, Merry Christmas. It is a beautiful, it's a magical, it's a wonderful time of year, but it can also be a really, really hard time. And that's okay too. And if it is for you, just hold on, just keep going, because I know we hear this a lot. You're not alone, but you're really not. You're really not. And I just want to make sure that you know that. So, like with every chapter, we're going to look at this through the lens of God's love. And then we're going to go into the crowned truth. So, through the lens of God's love, I don't just see machines, charts, and a 3 a.m. signature. I see 25 days of small mercies, an ordinary dinner that turned holy, a doorway hug, a hand resting on my leg to fall asleep, a hoodie's dusty shimmer that looked like the shroud of Jesus. Heaven was preparing me long before I knew it. Through the lens of God's love, I can hold both truths at once: the ache of loss and the gift of presence. Love was not absent from my grief, it was woven through it. 7 shocks, whispered prayers, and green eyes that said everything when words could not. Through the lens of God's love, I see God wasn't punishing me, He was positioning me, even on Christmas Eve, when breath left and paperwork waited. His whisper outran grief's scream: I am still here. And that's what God let me know. I am still here. Through all of this, I am still here. And so I need you to know that with whatever it is that you're going through. That's the whole purpose of this book, is to help you see things from God's eyes. And He is telling you, I am still here, no matter what. So in our crowned truth, and this is something that I had to learn, something that you've probably learned, or maybe you haven't yet. Life can change in a single breath. One moment, you're hanging ornaments, and the next, you're learning how to breathe again without the person beside you. Every hug matters. Every kiss on the cheek matters. Every I love you whispered in passing becomes holy. God's presence isn't just found in miracles that save. It's found in the ones that carry. He shows up in the details, even in the heartbreak, in the tug that sends you back for one last kiss, in the words that echo at the nurse's station, in the strength that rises when your knees want to give out. Grief may feel endless, but even in the valley of death, His presence is unmistakable. He is the God of the final breath and the one who meets you in the silence after it. Even when the unthinkable happens, He is still there, in the signs, in the stillness, and in the love that will not die. That is the crown truth. That is God's truth. So as we get ready to close tonight's episode out of Behind the Lyrics, and you guys have heard little snips, I do want to end with our prayer. Dear God, in the hush of grief, thank you for being the whisper that reminds us we are not alone. Thank you for the small mercies, dinners, laughter, tender looks, and the kind of moments we only recognize as miracles in hindsight. Thank you for the steady hand at our back when the room feels empty. For the one reading this, meet them in their ache. Hold what they couldn't say, lift what they can't carry, turn their mourning into strength, their heartbreak into hope, and let your presence fill the spaces where a loved one used to be. In Jesus' name, amen. So I hope that you got something out of this conversation tonight. I hope that if you have not gotten my book, Crowned by Faith, that you do. Not just because I want you to get a book of mine, but because there is so much love and message through this book, through God. I'm just the vessel. I just put it on paper. But what he needed to say through it, he just used me as an example. I'm no different than anyone else, but the love that is in this book is hard to explain. So as we wrap things up, I just want to wish you a Merry Christmas and thank you for tuning in tonight and for all of the love and support. And yes, we will be back next week and we will be covering chapter 4, which is actually the chapter that is the song for Rear View Prayers, which, without giving too much away, the chapter is called Running to Love. And it's actually a song that kind of is written to my mom, but is about me running away at a young age. We'll kind of come back to where we were, but I really wanted to jump ahead to Christmas Eve, chapter 11, because it's appropriate, because today was the day that it all happened.
If today's episode speaks to you, Crowned by Faith is the book behind these stories and songs. You can order your copy at crownedbyfaithcollective.com.
Crowned by faith. Crowned by faith. This is my comeback dance. I walked through nights I never talked about. Pero mírame ahora shining anyway. God help me when I felt alone. And now my heart beats louder, brighter, ready to claim everything he promised. No more hiding who I am, no more dimming this glow. He turned my scars into stories, and my stories into fuego. I'm crowned by faith, look at me shining bright. He healed my corazón and helped me win this long fight. I rise con fe, with joy in my veins, dancing out the darkness like it never had my name. Crowned by faith, that's who I am. Crowned by faith, this is my comeback dance. This is your Prospera era, where dreams align with grace, abundance flows like rivers. You've stepped into your place. Rise, reign, and remember, you were born to shine. Welcome to your moment, Prospera, it's time.
We hope you enjoyed today's show on Prospera TV Network. Make it a point to visit us on YouTube and catch all your favorite shows anytime you want. Interested in hosting a show of your own? Or advertising your business on our network? Contact Elena Rodriguez.